Well, everybody, it's your lucky day. We are back. But you might have noticed that the name of the channel has changed. It is no longer the Daily Dose of Theological German, but Readings in Theological German. And the reason for that is that, well, I've been very busy working on my dissertation, and so I have not done a daily video in a long time and probably will not be able to do daily videos for some time into the future. However, there comes a time in everyone's life when you have to translate an entire article from German into English so that you can, be super smart when you're writing your dissertation and talking about said article or author in your defense. And so, well, I've reached that point in my dissertation writing. And I thought, since I have to do a whole entire article from German into English, why not bring all of you folks along for the ride? And that way you can continue to get some high quality practice on your German to keep you fresh. We'll continue to talk about syntax and grammar and all the things that we've always done on this channel. But we'll be doing it with much longer stretches of text at a time. So you should expect maybe a weekly video with a minimum of a paragraph. And so you'll just get exposed to more German more quickly, but with all the same kinds of sort of helpful discussion that we've been able to do so far. So I hope that's going to be helpful to you. And do let me know in the comments if you have suggestions or feedback or ways that we can make it better as we go along. But get ready, because this is going to be, I think, a pretty interesting and informative article. And so even if you're not trying to learn German, you might just learn something about the area that this article is talking about. So it'll also be beneficial to go through a whole article for that reason. So here's the article that we're going to be translating, and before I get into it though, I just want to remind you that it's really important, especially now that we're doing videos again and doing them sort of less frequently, that you should turn on the notification bell and subscribe to the channel so that you actually get notified when these videos go live, so that you know that they're there and can go and watch them. So that would be helpful to you, but also helpful to me, because it would just ensure that these videos are getting to the right people that want to see them. And so that's the whole idea. Anyways, this article by Georg Steins, let's see what it's about. The title of the article, as you can see, is Priesthood, People of Priests, or What Else? On the interpretation of Exodus 19:6. Now, this little preposition here, I said on the interpretation. If you wanted to sound extra pretentious, you could say toward an interpretation of Exodus 19:6. You know, in scholarship, we're forever going toward things. We never arrive, which I guess is true, and that's why we all have, stuff to keep working on. But nevertheless, I digress. Let's get on with it. Here we are in the introduction. Exodus 19:1-8 is, in many respects, I'm just going to leave this in German, Spitzentext in the Pentateuch. Now, just a couple basic things here. Don't forget you have a contraction in the preposition, and dem, the article, are pushed together there. Nothing else in this sentence is particularly complicated syntactically. This here, though, Spitzentext, you will not find this in the dictionary. And then when you look up Spitz and try to do this compound word, you discover that it means something like top or peak of a mountain, or point, like of a knife. And you're going, what? Is this a pointed text? A top text? I don't know what to do with this. Well, you'll notice here that it's actually in quotes also in German, because it's kind of a technical literary term. And so even though it's not in the dictionary, well, this is just a great example. When you're trying to really translate German and do a full translation and make sure you're getting it right, you might actually have to do some research in German. So I actually had to go all over the internet trying to find examples of this word being used in other German contexts. And I even just searched on German Google, what does Spitzentext mean and what does it apply to, and so forth. And in the end, what I've come up with is that basically Spitzentext means a kind of a text with a special status in some way within a kind of culture or discourse context or whatever. And so in this case, I might translate it as something like a centrally significant text, because the whole idea is that it's like a text that stands apart in the sense of what it contributes to kind of the overall sphere of discourse that it's within, in this case, the Pentateuch, as the sentence says. So this is a good example of why often in English scholarship you'll have German words that just stay German, because sometimes it's just hard to think of a really good translation, and it's referring to something kind of nuanced in particular. It's not just an adjective of this being like an important text. It's kind of saying something a little deeper than that. So we could just leave it and just say it's a Spitzentext and hope that our readers are smart enough to know what a Spitzentext is. But we might also just say a centrally significant text. Okay, so here's a super fun sentence with all kinds of confusing things and appositional phrases that delay the verb. In German, is forever delaying the verb. It's so confusing. Well, in German, it's not confusing at all, but it's confusing to somebody that's, uses a language that works differently, such as English. Anyways, the verb here in the second sentence is way down here. That's technically in second position, but there's all these modifying phrases that come first. So let's get to it. In the Sinai Pericope. Now, the reason I've jumped over there is because this stuff that comes before actually modifies Sinai Pericope. And in English, we'll put it after when we're doing that kind of modification. So in the Sinai Pericope, that begins with Exodus 19. Okay, and then here you could say thus or that is, because this is all in apposition. So that is the center of the Pentateuch, although I would say central section because it really is talking about a central section, not just the dead center, which in English you might think if you just said center. Okay. In other words, the center or central section of the Pentateuch, and again, this is all modifying that, so reaching from Exodus 19 until Numbers 10. Okay, then you get to your verb and your subject is after that. So the text. Okay, so in the Sinai Pericope, which is in the central section of the Pentateuch, beginning of this area, going to that area, okay, the text has, and the text in question is this opening text up here, Exodus 19, 1 to 8. Okay, so that's the text that we're actually referring to. So within, and actually that might be a better way to translate this preposition, actually say within the Sinai Pericope, okay? Within the Sinai Pericope, the text of Exodus 19, 1 to 8 has a significance which is comparable with the preamble of a constitution. And just notice that the verb here is at the end because this is in a subordinate clause. And so this whole clause here is subordinate to the previous one, and so the verb is down there at the end. So this next sentence is actually a quote. In German, often the quotes are formatted this way, where you've got the opening quote down below and the closing quote up above. Okay, so this whole thing is a quote from a different author, so just make sure you're catching that while you're working through a text like this. Okay, so no question. Here, and then this wird could be becomes, or it could be a passive construction, but it's in the conjugated position. And in fact, here you'll see that you could translate it with become or make it passive, and it would work either way. And it kind of shows you why it is that this verb does both of those things in German, because they're closely related semantically anyways. But nevertheless, here it's going to be passive, I'll say, and so we'll just kind of hang on to that verb for a second until we get down to the end. And so here you'll see in anticipation, or in the anticipation, okay, which is kind of referring to this section again, that this section is kind of anticipates the whole rest of the Sinai Pericope in some way, and what's going to be set up there is all anticipated in this section. And so here it's saying, here in the anticipation, the ideal divine relationship, the constitution of Israel as people of the King Yahweh, okay, and then we'll pick up this verb, is defined, and go to the end of the clause because you're now in a secondary clause, okay, and so is put, or set you could say, but I'm going to say put because it'll work better for the English translation, is put at the same time in force. So it's put in force, okay? It's defined and it's put in force. Okay, I don't really want to over-explain things in all of these videos, so please do share comments if you think I could explain less or more, or if there's things I'm kind of skipping that's confusing to you. But some of these sentences I want to just kind of be able to go through quickly, so hopefully you'll be able to track what I'm doing, but I'll sort of explain in the first couple videos anyways, so that you get back used to what's going on. So here you're going to notice I want to start the sentence up here probably, because that's where the subject is, which you find because you notice right away that this here is not a noun or whatever, it's modifying something, then the verb is always comes second after whatever is first, whether the subject is first or some other thing is first, the verb always comes second. And if that's not the subject up front, then you know your subject comes right after the verb. So that's kind of why you'll just jump there quickly to grab it. So this is going to say, the section also, oh, this is interesting, falls formally. But here's a problem. Look down here at the end of the sentence. auf. So this is actually not the verb fallen or fehlen. It's auffallen, and so you want to make sure you know it's a separable verb. There's a whole question. How do I know it's a separable verb? I'm halfway done translating the sentence, and then I get down there and discover, oh, I got to go back and change what I did. Well, first of all, I made a whole video, 20 minutes long, all about separable verbs to try to help you get some more intuitive grasp of what it is that's going on with separable verbs in German. However, in that video, I did show an example sentence of a kind of separable verb in English where I was talking about somebody that said they would turn the music on the radio up. And in that example, if you're a user of English, you should notice that long before you ever got to the up in that sentence, you kind of were expecting it. You were expecting either an up or a down because when you're turning the music on the radio, it invites a kind of context that tells you, ooh, I've got kind of a combined phrasal verb here. And so you kind of know what's coming. And it's the same thing in German. You just have to get really good with German. A German, kind of native German user reading a sentence like this would know that auf was coming in a sentence like this long before they got to the end of the sentence. And so it's just not as confusing to Germans as it is to us. But it's good to have the habit of just checking down there because then you know what you're doing. Okay, I'm going to start over with this sentence so that we can just translate it quickly. Okay, so here we're going to say the section also stands out, formally speaking, because of its, and then here you have another quote, okay, so notice again the quotation mark, always pay attention. Because it stands out formally because of its extraordinary, which this compound word in German is kind of the same as in English, right? Außer, outside of, ordentlich, ordinary, extraordinary, same word. Because of its extraordinary cohesion and beauty. So it speaks of Israel as a treasure, kind of special treasure, klein. You can see that that's related to the word for small. And so it's kind of a diminutive kind of term, and it means a kind of special, beloved treasure of the divine king. And it, these pronouns, by the way, here and here, are referring back to der Abschnitt, the section, okay? So don't think that is going to refer to like the king, for instance. You got to pay attention to your context. So it speaks of Israel as the treasure of the divine king, and it is itself a literary treasure. As always, I hope you will find this helpful, and please do subscribe and like, and especially turn on your notifications, and we'll go through paragraph by paragraph, maybe 2 paragraphs next time, and you'll get a lot, I think, out of this article.